All right, hi, my name is Gina Kerr. I'm the owner-operator along with my husband of Whispering Wild Market Farm. We're a diverse farm out in Misery Bay area, about 2 or 3 miles away from the beach. And we grow all kinds of fruits and vegetables. We raise pigs, chickens, ducks, rabbits, goats, kind of a, you name it, kind of a thing. And we're going to talk about indoor seed starting. So one of the reasons that I like to talk on this subject day, because we're collecting seeds, but also because it is not natural to us. We don't really, we're not born with this knowledge, right? So we need to share. And so one of the things that I like to start with is just, given the fact that I'm a farmer, not a home gardener, you're going to kind of have to take this knowledge and translate it into what you can do with your home setup. And everything that I'm going to tell you today is just things that I've done that have worked for me, knowledge that I've been bestowed upon from others. And so other things work too. This is not, this is not like the only thing that will work. So basically what you need to do is control your variables, right? There's lots of different things going on. And you can tweak things here and there, but really what you want to start with is kind of the known successes so that you have a starting point, okay? And really where that starts is the seeds itself. And being that we're doing a seed exchange, I don't want to push new seed too hard here because there's very few of them out there. But I would like to suggest is to do a germination test on some of those seeds. If success is really what you desire. If you just want to kind of, willy-nilly, if you get what you get and you don't get upset, don't worry about it. But if space is limited, you're really trying to grow your own food this year, maybe do a germination test. Or the other thing that you can do is starting your seeds in a flat and using more of a European style where whatever comes up, you tease that out at the cotyledon stage where it's just that first seed leaf. Tease it out and then replant those seedlings onto bigger pots so that you're basically getting everything that you could possibly get out of your seeds with limited space. The next variable would be your potting mix. Now, I put up there potting mix versus seed starting mix versus homemade. A lot of people ask me if I homemade my seed starting mix. I do not. It's just one of those variables that you can screw it up, and these companies go out of their way to figure out the best mixes, and it's just one of those things where I don't want to spend the time to do it. So I purchase potting mix instead of seed starting mix. Again, if you're going to do a flat, seed starting mix is actually probably the best thing, but potting mix works just fine as well. So if you just want to make one purchase, my suggestion would be potting mix, because once you pot them on, the seed starting isn't there. There's not enough there. There's not enough stuff. There's not enough fertilizer. There's not enough stuff for the roots to really climb into. The seed starting mix is really fine, mostly peat moss based. And it's good for starting those seeds, but like cotyledon stage, you got to pot them onto potting mix anyways. So I always just say, go for the potting mix. Once you get that potting mix in the house, you're going to want to rehydrate. Usually I have this whole setup and I kind of show you how much water it's going to take to rehydrate that potting mix. It's a lot. They try to dehydrate it as much as possible because water is heavy, especially when it's absorbed in potting mix. It also makes it much bigger. So rehydrating that potting mix before you even put it into your containers is key. If you get nothing else from this talk, take that home with you. Rehydrate your potting mix. It's going to give your seeds a good start, and it's going to give those roots something to actually find when it goes down, because they will immediately start to go down once they germinate. And if they don't find, if you're watering dry from the surface, that water is only going to get that surface layer, and once those roots start going down, there's not going to be anything there. And I can't tell you how many times people say, I start my own seeds, but they germinate, and a week later they're dead. And I say, do you hydrate your potting mix before you put it in your containers? And then usually the answer is usually no. And that water just stays on the surface and it doesn't go to the bottom. Speaking of water, When you're watering, Elena already mentioned this, watering from the bottom, because those roots are going to immediately go down searching for water. So if you're watering from the top, it might not penetrate all the way. If you water from the bottom, it will immediately pick it up from the bottom. If you have a white mold problem, anybody? I know I do. Using an inorganic material to surface coat your soil. I've tried dry potting mix. I've tried, trying not to water it too much. It doesn't work. The only thing that really works is an inorganic material, perlite. What's the other one? Vermiculite. Some people use sand. That might be a little. I haven't tried that yet. It seems a little heavy, but it could work as long as there's no organic material in that sand. You really want it just the inorganic. The other thing that could help control that white mold, like Elena said, was a fan to help the air move, because it's not in that white mold is not in the soil, it's in the air, and it settles. So if there's constant air movement, that will help to keep it from settling. What happened? There we go. If you're starting onions from seed in flats, or anything in flats, and if you've got cats, a good tip is to put some plastic forks or knives or spoons or whatever you got. I break them in half and stick them in there so to keep the cats out, because they will use it as a bed or a litter. Little stinkers. I've lost a lot of onions due to cats. Okay. Next, lighting, water, fertilizer. We have had a couple of times where we've kind of experimented with more expensive LED lighting. And it's not that it doesn't work, but the cheap stuff works just as well, in my opinion. So if you want to get crazy and spend a lot of money on your setup, great, more power to you. I'm not going to tell you not to do that. It's just, you're probably going to get about equal the results. So basic cheap lights work just as well. So, and you can purchase those at any hardware store, Walmart, online. I really like the LEDs better than the fluorescents, because the fluorescent bulbs end up dimming or just going out, and you have to replace them, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to undo what you've already done. And so I like the LEDs. They last a lot longer. The plants tend to do a little better because you might be able to give more information on the whole spectrum thing. Come here. He's my technical guy.
So what do you want to talk about?
The light spectrum with LED versus fluorescence.
Okay, so plants use different spectrums of light to grow, and different plants use various different spectrums. And one of the reasons we see the green light is because they reject green light, so we don't really need to waste the money on green. It's more blues and reds that they use. And so having a high color temperature, 6,000, 6,500, and a low temperature, more around 4,000, mixing the bulbs. So on some of our racks, we have a high temperature and a low temperature bulb, and that gives a better bang for your buck as far as the lights going in. And they don't cost any more to do one or the other. It's just when you're purchasing the lights, whether you're doing fluorescents or LEDs, pay attention to your color temperature. Mixing them helps. Brightness is a thing. And now, just to add to what Gina said about LED lights, cheap ones versus commercial, the amount of light you get on them is really important. If the light's too dim, the plants are going to become leggy and thin, and they're not going to be strong. So the intensity of light, and you can get a lot of light cheaply with really cheap LED lights that you buy online. They're AC, they're really tiny. You can stack a bunch of them together. Some of our shelves we have 3, some of them we have 5. Just depends on what I had at the time. Now this year we are experimenting with actually really inexpensive commercial style lights, and they're giving us the same, a really good intensity. This past year prices have come down a lot. And what's interesting about these new ones, and I don't really have any data to show it, but it looks like these ones, because they have UV light in them, they're actually helping the mold problem. So the Phison. What I'm experimenting this year with is a Phison. I think it's a PL 1000 off Amazon. It's like $50, and it's pretty bright for the price, and it's got UV and infrared light, which is they're two of the things that plants will also use that are typically not in your shop light. Not usually important for germination, but if you're growing the plants much bigger indoors, that becomes more important. And the UV again can help with keep down mold because the UV light kills mold. So
Thank you. All right, so you can see where we have, I think, 3 here, but you can kind of see where the edges are a little bit dimmer, and I will see the plants kind of reach for that light on the edges. So we could, it would be better if we had at least one more. Right, you got to think about that. Oh, let's go back. Okay, so that's the lights. When to water? Some people do like once a week or once every whenever. I like to go by the weight of the container. So I use those trays like you saw, and if you just lift them up, a dry material in those containers is very lightweight, and I can tell very immediately if they need to be watered or not. If you have a heavier container, that's going to be a little harder. So you're going to got to figure out a different way. But weight tends to be a really good gauge for me. And that can be, depending on how much soil is in your containers, how big your containers are, will also be a very distinct gauge. A smaller, I have little trays where the cups are just, that big and that wide or that tall. Those need to be watered every couple of days because there's just not very much soil to absorb the water, right? That makes sense. A 72 cell tray with a cell that is, maybe that deep, that can go a few more days. 3.5 inch container, that can go a few more days. Using a high nitrogen liquid fertilizer mixed into your water every other watering. So you're going to hydrate your soil, plant your seeds, they're going to germinate. Once it's dry, you're going to water. That's number 1. The next time that you water, you want to have some high nitrogen fertilizer. I use fish emulsion. It's stinky, so if you're using it in the house, just either deal with it or you can find something else that you can use, but in the water is going to be the best bet. And then a fan to mimic the wind. Hardening off is the next thing, I think. Yeah, so hardening off, really important step that a lot of people miss, right? Before you plant outside, you got to introduce it to the outside conditions, the sun. The full sun is even with 5 or 6 LED lights, full sun, massive amount of light difference. Start with 2 or 3 hours every day, and that's really hard when you have like a full-time job. So what I recommend is if you're working your 9 to 5, come home, get them outside immediately, let them have the afternoon sun, bring them back in at night. If you do that for 2, 3, 4 days, if you can maybe take a lunch break and go put your seeds out after that, and then bring them in at night, and then maybe on the weekend extend that even further. Dappled sun is best, so if you have some trees maybe that you can put them under, or I have a ramp that has railings, and so that edge gets dappled sunlight, which is really nice, so I just put them on the edge of that railing. That works out well. And then keep plants inside if there's any weather. So if it's raining or if it's super windy that day, just don't skip that day. And bring them in at night because it's going to be too cold, especially for, onions and things like that might be able to handle an overnight outside, but your tomatoes and your peppers are not. Not yet, anyway. Is that it? I guess that's it. Okay, questions?
I have a problem with fungus gnats.
Interesting. Okay, are you using fresh potting soil?
Yes.
Okay. That's a good question. I would try, I think cinnamon. Have you tried cinnamon?
No.
Sprinkle some cinnamon over the top. That might keep them away.
Do you, indoors when you're germinating, do you have to keep the light on 24 hours or do you set?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I think 12 hours is what it's on. It's on a timer too, so yeah.
12 to 16 hours is typically what's recommended.
Yeah, I think it clicks on about 6 a.m., 7 a.m.
So we're doing 6:30 to 9:30, I think.
Yeah. And it works out well. They appreciate it. Now, I will tell you the fluorescence, where there's 2 different bulbs, I will rotate those, the trays, so that they get a nice diverse amount of light. Any other questions? Yes.
So when you are like bottom watering, how much water do you use? How long do you let it sit there?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So I have found using those 72 cell trays or a 3.5-inch container filling the tray, it takes about 1/3 of a gallon.
Okay.
But
And then how long?
that's going to depend on how wet it already is, you know, the moisture in your house,
Whether you got
lots of different
covers on-
variables.
Covers on them.
Whether you got covers on them or not.
If you say were to go like over water it
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, like how long do you let that water sit in there before you're like might maybe want to get rid of it?
I would check it probably like after about 12 hours. And if there's still some water left, I would dump that out.
Okay.
They can handle a little overwatering for a while,
Okay.
but not too long. Anything else? Any other general gardening questions for me?
What happens if you have no room for seed starting?
What happens if you have no room? I
For
know.
another year, hey?
Well, there's a lot of things that you can start super early, or there's also that technique where you can do the in the milk crates outside, the winter seed starting. I have no experience, so but I've seen it. And basically, you get your milk crates or whatever containers you want to use. You cut them with about 1/3 of it off the top. Put your soil in there, plant your seeds, put the top back on, and then set them out in the cold. And when it's warm enough, they will germinate, and then you go from there.
All right, let's give it up for Gina. So if you have